Hello and welcome back to another episode of Medieval Guy. I was going to bring some reward caskets into the fight against Kishogi or whatever, the deathless guy. I don't know how to say his name. But I do have actually an easy clue and a medium clue that I'm going to bring in, as well as the parts to a steel crossbow and a whole bunch of crossbow bolts. So I'm going to cheese that fight at the end, but I actually don't need these beginner clues, so I figured I would start the episode off by opening up some beginner clues. Oh man, third age bow drop from an easy clue. Guess we're done, guys. See you later. Bye-bye.
This is Medieval Guy. He's a medieval-only Iron Man. That means no magic, no rune crafting, and no magical items inconsistent with medieval lore. Together, we explore RuneScape and compare it to the medieval world of Europe to learn what life was like for people then and how it informs our gaming today. Join us as we compare Galenor to the real world that inspired it.
Okay, so here we are in Relica. Before we start this, I do want to just make a couple of quick comments about, a couple of things that I noticed as I came in here. I did do a little bit of preliminary research just on kind of the background of these characters and why Relica is the way that it is and why the Fremenniks are the way that they are. I could not find a specific reference to the name Fremennik, why they are named the way they are. However, most of the names of the important characters are based very heavily in Nordic and or like traditional Germanic English names. So one thing to remember about these quote Vikings unquote is that we always associate them with purely Norse ideology, but actually the Norse mythology was really Germanic mythology that was shared between the people in Northern Europe and Central Europe. So really the Asir and the Vanir are really part of the same mythology. So there's a very, very strong shared cultural heritage between the Norse and the Germanic tribes. So that's really what we're looking at here. We're looking at Germanic tribes, and really the houses are extremely period appropriate for something like this. The only thing I would say is that they're actually a little nice. This longhouse would be like the one really nice building, and the rest of these houses, especially in kind of the upper northern areas in Europe, would probably be built into the ground a little bit more. Using this amount of timber for just like minor dwellings is probably a waste of resources when you can just build them out of the ground itself for your average person. However, I do like the thatched roofs, and I am kind of nitpicking. This is very, very good representation of a medieval town. Probably one of the most accurate, actually. Really the only thing here that is kind of missing from a medieval village or town or something would be the massive amounts of crops that would be around. And they do have some crops here, but really, I mean, you would expect to see something more like a breadbasket like we see down in Lumbridge, right? I mean, with just field after field after field of wheat and barley and things like that. Lots of cows, cattle, any kind of livestock would be helpful. Relica here, apparently they're just primarily fishers, which is actually accurate to many of the Norse. They did live so high up north that they could not get very good farming out of their soil, so they did have to go and raid for resources. That is not a myth. But I still would like to see something a little bit more to indicate, that they aren't just like completely destitute up here. So other than that, this looks really good, and actually because of the simple nature of their clothing and weapons, the fact that they're using spears, helmets without horns, round wooden shields, and fur-lined boots and clothing, this is actually one of the most accurate representations of a Viking probably in gaming, period. I mean, move over Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Like, this is the real historical story here. The chieftain here looks great. I mean, his clothing, he has some gilded armor, so some gilded armor pieces. That's exactly what you'd expect from kind of the leader of one of these tribes. He would have much, much better things, but he wouldn't be walking around wearing it, obviously. And I do like that he has a hammer. The hammer is very closely associated, obviously, with Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, and that was true all the way back. to the oldest days of the Norse. Oh, and you know what? I didn't notice this before, but you can actually see how they've cut down all the timbers here, and they have all these tree stumps around. This is actually very accurate because pulling up a stump is very, very hard, and they basically wouldn't do it. So you would have hundreds and hundreds of tree stumps in these areas that were cut down outside of villages. And you can kind of still see this today, actually, in like parts of like sub-Saharan Africa where they just like cut down or burn massive parts of the environment in order to clear out space for their settlements. So I actually like that they included all those tree stumps there. And I did mention in an earlier episode that much of Northern Europe that's empty today wasn't empty. It's actually massive deforestation. It really is on a cataclysmic scale. It might not be exactly in character, but I think I'm going to kill Lansing instead of building the Lyre, because he actually has a very rare drop chance of giving us some really cool medieval gear, including the Fremennik helm and the Fremennik blade. And if we get the Fremennik blade from him, then we don't need to actually kill Kyoshi level 4 or whatever. So that would be really cool. So I'm actually going to kill him until I get the Lyre. What to even say about the Vikings? So much of their culture is so well known, it feels redundant to say anything. To say that their influence left a lasting impact on the medieval world would be a gross understatement. Even RuneScape gets its name from the word rune, which references the symbols of the Viking Futhark alphabet. These runes represented sounds, but also had ideographic identity. A single letter might be the sound th, or the word Thor. This particular rune was called Thorn, and it was used as the TH sound for most of English's written history, meaning that Thorn actually would have been written like this. These runes became associated with magic and mysticism because they were used in enchantments on large structures known as standing stones. You can see some standing stones in RuneScape, and perhaps the altars at which we enchant runes are a reference to these ancient mystical places. But beyond their use on standing stones, the Viking Futhark alphabet also got a little bit of notoriety as a mystical alphabet through the use of alchemists. Medieval and Renaissance alchemists used them as a secret code with which they wrote their notes. This prevented others from reading their work and solidified runes as a mystical element. While their languages lived on, the Vikings as we know them were not around as long as one might think. The Vikings really operated in Northern Europe for the middle chunk of the Middle Ages, so from around 700 CE to 1100 CE, which is what we would call the Viking Age. What most people know is that these raiders from Scandinavia traveled by light, fast ships and pillaged goods from coastal towns. It's pretty common knowledge that Vikings didn't usually wear horns on their helmets, but some probably did for ceremonial purposes, just like many other people in the area. Our depiction of Vikings comes mostly from 13th century writing about the Vikings from monks who had been raided by them, so you can imagine how accurate those reports are. Hark, Brother Robert, those blonde-haired, blue-eyed rascals who raided your monastery 2 months past, doth thou rememberest what they smelled like? They smelled like As far as RuneScape's representation of a Viking-like tribe goes, I'm going to say that this is accurate. Like, super accurate. Vikings are remembered for their violent raids, but those raids were actually fairly small scale and only affected the most vulnerable towns. After all, they were about hit-and-run tactics, not laying down a siege. There's no room for onagers on a longboat. After a couple hundred years, the Vikings established long-term settlements in most of their forming stopping grounds, putting down roots in modern-day England, Ireland, Russia, Iceland, and Greenland. But they left North America alone because the natives were too dangerous. That's right, native Canadians beat the Vikings. Anyway, they were savvy, tough merchants who dealt in many resources, but also had a lot of slaves. This is something that we might not remember about them. They called their slaves thralls, and it's where we get our word enthralled, or to be held captive by. They took thralls liberally from their raiding grounds, and the slave trade was one of their largest cash cows. This is not represented in RuneScape for obvious reasons, as the Fremenniks are supposed to be noble and honorable. It's hard to make slavers sympathetic. Treatment of slaves varied widely, but it was generally merit-based. If you could work a trade or particularly good looking, you could live a cushy life as the slave of a wealthy Viking lord. But if you were dumb of brain and whack of face, good luck, buddy. But being good looking was not a guarantee for a good life either. Arabic diplomat Ibn Fadlan described a gruesome scene he witnessed while encountering a group of Vikings, in which 2 particularly attractive girls were raped while the rest of the Vikings watched. Interactions with people like Ibn Fadla are probably some of the most accurate writings we have of Vikings because they're not colored by the experiences of having the Vikings raid them all the time. Some of the things that he wrote about the Vikings are very interesting, and I think you should hear some of the quotes. They are the filthiest of all Allah's creatures. They do not purify themselves after excreting or urinating, or wash themselves when in a state of ritual impurity after coitus, and do not even wash their hands after food. I have never seen more perfect physiques than theirs. They are like palm trees, and are fair and reddish, and do not wear the tunic or the caftan. In the case of a rich man, they gather together his possessions, and divide them into 3 portions, 1/3 for his household, 1/3 with which to cut funeral garments for him, and 1/3 with which they ferment alcohol, which they drink on the day when his slave girl kills herself and is burned together with her master. How to Train Your Dragon definitely skimped out on those details. Ultimately, the Viking slave trade died down due to the mass adoption of Christianity by the 14th century, but by that time the Viking Age as we know it was over, and they had mostly settled into their new roles as citizens of whatever state they were in. All in all, RuneScape shows us a romanticized but fairly accurate depiction of Vikings in perhaps the 10th or 11th centuries, in which they've created their own settlements and are doing more farming than raiding. They nixed a bit on the slaves, but that's understandable. For a game that's currently adding more vampires, elves, and demons than warlords, monks, or villagers, it's nice to see that the medieval roots still shine through in some of the cultures of Gaelenor, and I for one appreciate it. Okay, we are officially ready to fight, Koschei the Deathless, or however you say his name is, Koschei? I'm just gonna say Koschei, I don't know anything, whatever, right? It's Russian, I don't know how to pronounce it. I think we can bring all these things in. We can build a crossbow in there. I am bringing the medium casket in, just in case we get some armor pieces. I'm not even gonna bother with a sword. Of course I can't bring a sword, what am I saying? That's the whole point. Yes, okay, cool. All right, so first things first, let's use this. I need a hammer to do that. Okay. Okay, so here we go. I think we're officially ready to go. Let's try this now. Okay, unstrung crossbow. Crossbow. Wield it. Okay, here we go. Let's open this reward casket and... well, we got an axe, so that's not nothing. Now we just prepare to... oh, he's kind of slow, but we should be able to safe spot him. Oh, there we go. Okay, now we're cooking. On his next phase, I almost feel like I should run out and let him hit me so that he doesn't despawn. Dude, this would be so great if I can kill him on this and get that adamant scimitar equivalent. Because that sword is so good for us. Look at it. Oh, I want it so bad. Come on. I just gotta kill him. Ooh, 9, that was a good one. Oh, come on. I'm so worried about him despawning. I'm so worried. Come on, please. Oh, we got our range level. Oh, how that would be so disappointing if that interrupted it and he despawned. Oh my gosh. Oh, yes! Fremennik blade! Yes! Drop the shark, take the blade. Drop the shark, take the blade. Oh, I gotta eat the shark. Take the blade take the bolts. Oh my gosh, yes! Yes! Wield the, need to complete the need to complete the Fremennik trials before I can wield this. That's okay. Oh, look at that slash bonus. Oh, okay, alright. I gotta talk to Thorvald. Oh, yes, okay. Yes! Yes! Okay, there it is! Oh, we're peak medieval guy now. Look at us! I don't think anybody in the game has ever appreciated the Fremennik blade as much as I do right now. Look at that. Absolutely classic design. This like two-handed sword. Actually, that's very long for an arming sword. That's a good maybe 4 feet, right? That's a good that's a broadsword actually. That's a little beyond just a simple arming sword. This is a big boy. Oh, I'm so excited. Look at that. All right. I can't think of a better way to wrap up the episode than that. I mean, this is just beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for the myth, the legend, medieval guy? Yes. Okay, so obviously I'm not wearing the Fremennik blade right now because I wanted to get the archer's helm. I have made a lot of jokes about big horns, not just in this episode, but in other episodes as well. And I do want to redact that statement just a little bit, because horns have been worn on medieval helmets and in ancient helmets and whatnot, for lots of reasons. People, just like today, they wanted to have fun. They wanted to look cool and awesome, and having big, ridiculous headgear was one way to stand out on the battlefield. We now have a plus 79 range bonus with all this. I also realized that the mirror shield is slightly better than the dragon fire shield, or the anti-dragon shield, or whatever it's called. I never noticed this before, but there actually is a mirrored effect on that. Look at that. Look at the way that the pattern moves. So it actually is kind of mirrored. Interesting. Okay, cool. Now let's throw on our max melee gear. Yes, Olaf's quest. We can now start this and get to our brine rats, because as awesome as this sword is, the brine saber is still much, much better. But that's gonna be a little ways off because we have to get through a quest and get to actually killing those brine rats. But for the meantime, this is medieval guy, looking amazing, looking incredible. I gotta go back to the range. Ah, so good. All right. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. And see you next time.